it's interesting to think about, how all of this gets twisted around. Of course, the biggest story coming out of this is Tito Ortiz. He's going to get high marks from everyone in TNA with the feeling that with his demeanor and look and charisma, he could be a natural for pro wrestling. Listen, you've worked with a lot of MMA fighters in this era, Frank Trigg and others. What do you, how would you classify Tito? Like in an alternate universe, I did think as an early UFC fan, hey, this guy feels like a pro wrestling type promoter or attraction. Like the way he positioned his fights and talked his fights up, it did feel like he had a little wrestling in him. Did you see that as well?
Oh shit, Conrad. And I can remember one of the early conversations because I watched my chiropractor, Dr. Tim, who we've had on here. There were a couple of buddies during this era that had come off the road that were really getting into UFC. They loved Tito. But one of the first questions I asked Tito, I said, "Hey man, let me ask you a question. When you're doing your interviews and hyping things up, do you have anybody like producing you or direction?" No. And so Conrad, his natural charisma, you can't teach it, you can't coach it. It is just innately. I think he had the ability to be the biggest crossover, and I don't consider Brock because I think Brock was wrestling, then MMA, then came back. So I'm saying a guy who made his name in MMA, I think he could have been the biggest crossover had he chose that direction because of his charisma alone. Because his charisma, to my knowledge, was never produced. And I just think, that's one of the things that I think in today's environment, Conrad, that there is such a blowback on the writers and this, go out there and say what you want to say. The reality is, Conrad, that's a myth. I have seen my old man when I was in high school pull talent into a room and say, "These are the points I want you to hit. And I want you to do this is 1, this is 2, this is 3." That's being produced. Now, is it writing it word for word? I get all that, but the myth that the generation of the 60s or 70s or 80s weren't produced, that's a crock of shit. It's false. It's not true. So every talent, to me, to take it to another level, I don't care if you're The Rock or Stone Cold or Cena or any modern day, if you're not produced, you're completely missing the boat because you can't produce yourselves, period. Oh, Jeff, you produce yourself. Bullshit. Dutch Mantel, at the end of the day, and Vince Russo, they produce me. Did I have ultimate authority? Yes. But at the end of the day, you've got to you got to have uh, that coach, that mentor, whatever it may be. And Tito had the ability to go to the moon because he had that ball of clay of being a natural born, charismatic, arrogant, over the top badass. And that draws money.
I do want to ask you about Jeff Hardy. It's written here that he no showed, and the Observer would say he canceled and reserved a flight from North Carolina to Orlando either 6 or 8 times over the weekend, pushing the departure time back each time, before finally not getting there at all. He did arrive after the show ended, and he was at the hotel hanging out with fans at midnight with his body completely painted up like he was ready for a match. 2 days later at the TV tapings, it comes out that he was suspended. It's written in the Observer that Jeff was very apologetic, but he didn't do himself any favors when he said the reason he kept canceling his flight was because he was running errands. And there's been considerable heat on Jeff Jarrett for refusing to fire Jeff Hardy because the two were close after he had arrived late many times and once without even calling and then blew off a TV taping. So we know, with the benefit of hindsight, what's going on with Jeff here. But even back then, you were a big advocate and an ally. What do you remember about Jeff pushing his flights back and then showing up after the show had finished and ultimately you guys having to suspend him?
If my memory serves me correctly, this pay-per-view is on a Sunday. I believe I did Mexico this actual weekend going into the show. Got a black eye. I just remember it was a crazy weekend, and dealing with AJ's great, and we'd worked together a lot. And by this stage of our relationship, he probably laid out a lot of it, or a good bit of it, and we talked and kind of worked through things. We were comfortable with each other, but getting Tito into the mix and kind of having that understanding and where he's going to be best utilized and all that kind of stuff. But I could just remember, and I guess it was the next day, or maybe it was late that night. I had late nights during those times, and I'm like, you mean Jeff was painted up at the hotel? Which means he landed and got painted and then still didn't head to the building. And I don't know. Everything, I was just like, damn. He was going through, obviously, I had no idea about the disease of addiction, but he was going through a crazy rough time. One of the notes as you were reading, how in the hell does somebody know he delayed his flight 6 or 7 times? I just, come on. Did Bob Ryder report that? did who reported that Jeff pushed his flight back 6 or 7 times? That I just don't see. I don't see Hardy reporting that. But anyway, that's kind of a chuckle, a theme of our pod today. But bless his heart. And I did. I took some slack. I took some slack from Panda. I took some slack from a lot of folks about me trying to really work with Jeff and have patience and try to get him on the right track. And that's back to what we said earlier. It's in everyone's human nature to try to take care of their friends. And Jeff has always been my friend.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because I do think, as a business owner, sometimes you have to make business decisions. And I know that's not always popular. I know a lot of times the hive mentality makes people want to think that they need to look out for the individuals and blah, blah, blah. And I get all that. But I am saying sometimes as a business owner, we've seen a lot of wrestling promoters say, hey man, as long as he's here and he's doing his job, I don't care what's going on in his personal life. So that's really what I wanted to get to you is, and you sort of put a button on it at the end when you said it was real life friend. But I wanted to ask, knowing where you are now in your life and your walk with sobriety and all of your recovery, I don't think you were in the same headspace 20 years ago, to say the least. But you clearly had a sympathetic, you were more sympathetic to Jeff than anybody else in TNA. And I wondered, was that based on old school wrestling promoter of, hey, the guy's a big star, he's a big draw, and if we can get him and we can use him to make money, we're still trying to dig out a profit here. We got to find a way to make use of what we can afford and what we got, and I have a relationship here. Or is it more based on, hey, he's my friend and I'm going to advocate for my friend? Is that always number one the entire time with you and Jeff? Or do you occasionally, if you're honest with yourself, say, I was doing some business there?
That is a really good how you frame the question, because I don't think it's either or.
Right.
I do think there's both, but for those that don't know, I met Jeff in 93 or 4 when Scott Hall was calling him Ice. Vanilla Ice was real hot during that time. And Matt and Jeff were coming in to WWF as enhancement talent. Back then we actually still did call them job boys. But Jeff had a crazy unique charisma from the day I met him. We became buds. You understand his story. We developed a friendship, and then they came in and the Hardy Boys and all that, just that relationship. And then, early in TNA, I reach out to him. So Conrad, I would have to say probably 1 would be friendship, 2 would be business, but I don't want to say maybe it's 1A and 1B, because I'd be lying if I didn't think that, hey, I knew how hot he got at the WWE. In a business sense, I've said it a couple of times. There was a time, and this is for kind of the business folks that listen into our podcast. When you understand the big machine of WWE, and when they go out to these live events, and when you have one talent who has more SKUs or more product at the merchandise stands than everything else combined, you go, this boy could move some merchandise, and he moved a boatload of merchandise for TNA. So Conrad, it goes without saying, yes, there's business involved, but I'd have to say out of the 1A and 1B, the 1A was the friendship.
Don't we all love summer vacation, relaxing, laying out by the pool, barbecues, hitting the beach, doing, well, nothing? Well, how about a summer vacation from your house payments? With SaveWithConrad.com, you can do just that. Reduce your monthly payments by making the equity you built up in your home work for you. You can roll together those high interest rate credit cards into one lower monthly payment, and perhaps access some of that newfound equity to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket. And how about this? You get to skip your next 2 house payments. That's right. You won't have to make your June or your July house payment. You're done until August 1st. Go right now to SaveWithConrad.com. Let my team run the numbers for you for free. There's no obligation, and if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. And did I mention we're offering a 3-year guarantee right now? That's right. That means if at any point interest rates improve over the next 3 years, you get a free refi. That's right. No new lender fees from us. So you get to save money now without wasting money later when the rates improve on a whole second set of closing costs. Why not go to SaveWithConrad.com and get a guarantee? Save money now and save money later with your friend in the mortgage business. That's me, Conrad Thompson at SaveWithConrad.com. Shoot me an email at Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com. Give us a call at 888-425-0105. Or get yourself a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. Let's take a summer vacation from house payments at SaveWithConrad.com.